today. They've asked me to welcome you and kick this off as the mayor. So if you don't know who I am by now, it's John Schwed. I happen to have the privilege of serving as mayor of this fine community. We've had a very interesting past 3 days here in our town, in which we've had the services of Art Muldrow consultants here that have been doing what they call a branding study here in our community. And we are a town that obviously has a rich heritage. We got some little tarnished edges right now, and we're trying to polish it up again. So hopefully the work of these 3 days will highlight, based on the discussions from all of you that have been participating in this, and at the different focus groups in the different business segments and civic organizations, etc. Okay. So I just want to say that we appreciate your fine work here with us. Okay. The company has a great reputation. I think I said 350 communities, but I understand it's more like 450. I think writing studies. So that's a lot of studies in over 30 some states. I think.
Yep, that's right.
Right. So we got a company that's got a lot of wealth of experience. He does happen to reside in Milford, so he's one of our neighbors. Okay. And I also want to compliment Husky from the coastal program at the University of Delaware. He's been very instrumental with some of the ideas, and we'll talk a little bit about that as it unfolds. Paulie right here is helping us with our downtown development district application, assuming that the General Assembly grant fund will be ready. She's going to help us have the application. Also working with us on the upgrade of our annual, it's a 5-year commitment to the state. You have to revise your comprehensive plan every 5 years. So she's engaged in that process with us as well. So we got a lot of good folks trying to help us figure out like where we want to go in the future. So now it's time for us to sit back and listen to your report. So
here we go.
Here we go.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right.
Thank you all for coming out. How are you doing tonight? Good. You seem like an excited crowd. As the mayor said, my name is Ben Muldrow. I think I've met each of you over the course of this week. It's been a really great week here in Laurel. I was telling some folks yesterday was my wife's birthday, and so I took her out to a birthday dinner, and obviously over the course of dinner I ended up spending most of the time talking about Laurel. So by the end of it, she was like, and you got to understand, she is born and raised Milford, and she, at the end of the conversation, she literally said, and she can be a little bit of a smart aleck sometimes, but she said, I can't believe I'm going to say it, but I can't wait to go down and see Laurel. So obviously there's something, y'all did something right this week with the stories that you told and the things that you shared, because it made for a compelling enough dinner conversation. I want to start off with a couple thank yous. First of all, thank you, Mayor, for hosting this process this week. Jamie, thank you so much for all your coordination with the town and sitting through so many meetings and helping to get folks out. Of course, Ed, Leanne, you guys have been rocking it, and thank you so much. And then also Brian with all your help, and also giving me a place to hang out today and do some work. And Don with the chamber has been right along. It's been a really, really great process. One other important thank you. I've got Diane Laird, who is actually listening to this presentation in real time through my computer. So Diane, thank you for providing us the funding to do this project and being able to support Laurel in this effort. So I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to do my best to get you guys out of here by 7 o'clock so we can all go have dinner together or something. But I hope that you're going to like what you see. I think we've got some fun stuff to talk about. When I start, one of the things that I always do is I like to look at everything that exists. And these are just a couple of the logos that I picked up on. Obviously, you've got the town. This is the graphic off the website. And you've got the town seal. We talked about it the other day on these nice neoprene coasters. Got to state Delaware and Laurel, as you can imagine. And the point that we made about this is there's nothing wrong with this seal, but this is not a tool to market with. That's not what its purpose is. So we wanted to kind of dig into that. I did like how both the chamber and the town's website seemed to actually use a graphic that looked like a picture of a lapel pin. I'm not sure if that's what that is, but that's how it reads. It's kind of cool. We've got Chamber of Commerce, their graphic from their website, the Reimagined Laurel logo that was around for a while, the Laurel School District identity, and then the Ramble logo. Now, there are a couple different things going. Not a lot of consistency, virtually no coordination between them. That's fine. That's not, you don't lose points for that necessarily, because nobody expects that to be the mindset per se. But it is definitely one of the things that we want to start doing, is we want to create a more uniform communication platform so that we make it far easier for people to connect the dots with all the great things happening in Laurel. I think that's one of the big things that I was surprised by, was as I heard the stories and kept hearing more and more stories, I kept asking the question, why did I not know this stuff before? Why is Laurel not better known for all of this that it has to offer? As I went through and I kind of analyzed everything from a design standpoint, I felt like, based off of the input meetings, the Ramble truly symbolizes the future. And it also symbolizes momentum. People are excited about it. So I wanted to take that graphic and I wanted to use that overall style as inspiration moving forward. There's absolutely no reason to throw everything out. You gotta be real mindful about what's been used. There are a couple things I want to note on this. Obviously, you've got a very clean, fresh, contemporary style, but I'm going to be a design nerd a couple times over the night tonight. One of the things that's very interesting about the way this is designed is it's designed to be content neutral. Content neutrality is actually a very important thing in a branding process. A lot of times a community might sit there and they might sit around a table and have meetings like we had, and they might decide, well, you know what? We have the largest National Register district in the state, over 800 properties. So our logo needs to look old. We're a really pretty town, so we need to have a pretty typeface. But what we're looking for is an expandable and connected system. And this content neutrality is something that allows us to truly build our personality around the identity. A great example of this is from the private sector. Sears, Crate and Barrel, American Apparel, Jeep, they're more Bloomingdale's. All of those companies, their logo is the typeface Helvetica. Every single one of them. So it's not about going out and trying to find the most unique typeface ever to capture who you are. Just because you're old, you don't have to use papyrus. Just because you're opening a women's clothing store, you don't have to use curls. We're going to find something that's expandable. So the place that I really wanted to start was I wanted to start with the town itself. I talked a little bit about the seal. I did do a quick redesign to the seal, something that I simply thought would work better graphically. But it takes the exact same notes of everything that's happening here. What I did was I took a sans serif typeface and I coupled it with this kind of new redesigned, slightly bolder version of the seal. One of the nice things about this, though, is it now gives you a one-color version. I'm not sure if you've ever had that before. But it's also a vector version. So what that means is we can scale this thing up big enough to go on a water tower, or we could shrink it down to go on a business card and it'll never lose quality. So it's still got your outline. I represented Laurel in a slightly different way. I went more of the stylistic laurel wreath than the laurel branch. But you can see that it is also coupled with this sans serif word type. And this is going to become very important because a lot of times, if all you were doing was trying to use this seal, look at how tall the name Laurel is in comparison to the height of the whole seal. A seal isn't very good at communicating things. So coupling it with that word type, and you're going to see how that kind of comes in. But as you can see with this color palette, here we're seeing greens, we're seeing reds that I pulled from school. That school spirit is something that we wanted to preserve from that end. So this is really just kind of an update of what you already use, shoring up the town government. Now, in addition to that, I used some of the same typefaces and some of the same colors, and I went through, and one of the other ones that I wanted to just kind of jump in and show how they might slightly tweak their identity to fit in the system is the Alumni Association. So I know we had a couple folks from the Alumni Association. With this, you can see very, very simple adaptation. Now all of a sudden, still using the school district crest, but now we're using word type to start to create some connectivity. So that gives us an arena with kind of the town and some of the red stuff. But I also wanted there to be a little bit of a split. As we start to move forward, we're going to start talking about something called a destination brand. This destination brand has never existed. You've had town logos before, you've had a bunch of organizational logos, but you've never had a destination brand that is shared from throughout the community, that is used by both public sector and private sector, and is intended to build what we call brand equity in the community. So that's what we're going to talk about. And with that, what we did was we really leaned on the colors of the Ramble as the foundation for that system. So it had 5 defined colors, with the primary colors itself being a blue and a green. Then it had some very interesting variations of one dark gray that was actually used as the word coloring, a very light gray, and then what is actually kind of a warm cream, which is nice, and it comes out very well in that overall system. But we wanted to shore that up in our destination brand. We want to take what has started with the Ramble, and we want to convert that over into this overall community-wide brand. And I want to be very mindful about how we do this, because I want to caution the community on something that can oftentimes happen. Like I said, there is excitement around this project called the Ramble. But what you have to be mindful to do as you as a community begin to implement and complete that project as it transitions into a destination, you have to be very mindful of how the relationship between Laurel as a place and the Ramble as a project relate to one another. And what I mean by that, a great example is, has anybody ever been to Little Rock, Arkansas? Not a very popular community, apparently. Little Rock, Arkansas, if you were to talk to citizens in the surrounding area around Little Rock, and you were to ask them about downtown Little Rock, they would say downtown Little Rock is horrible. But there's this really great district right along the river in the middle of downtown called the River Market District. And the River Market District is amazing. And everybody says that the River Market District is amazing. But for some reason, it's never turned over to downtown, and it's never turned over to the community as a whole. So for some reason, what they have is a dynamic where they've created a self-contained brand that has captured cool and kept it locked up instead of having it filter out to the market as a whole. So as we go through, we need to constantly remember that this project is reinvigorating Laurel as a destination. And hopefully the graphic tools that we're going to show will help to illustrate how that works. So we've got our colors. They were predefined. We're already starting to see them in use in the community. The next thing that I wanted to do was select typefaces that we can use to connect the dots. So I identified 3 typefaces. The primary typeface at the top is a contemporary sans serif typeface. Again, go back to that content neutrality we talked about. The second is a condensed, what they call slab serif. And strangely enough, well, I'll tell you the story. The third one, the one that says accent typeface, that's actually the typeface that the word the ramble is now. Do what? Adele, yes. So here's the funny thing. I have been trying for the past day and a half to figure out what that typeface that the ramble was in was called. And Jules Bruck emailed midday today with that name. So long before I figured out what that was, I had selected the primary and secondary typefaces. So the accent typeface is called Adele Light, and that's Adele with one L. The accent typeface. The secondary typeface is called Adele with two L's. So without having any clue whatsoever, I ended up picking two typefaces that essentially had the same name, which is only interesting to me, but still, you know, it's one of those things. Me and Leanne. So what we're starting to see is we're starting to see a foundation. If we have an organization or event, they can lean on these colors. They can lean on these typefaces to create connectivity, and they don't have to be forced to look exactly alike all the time. So the third component that is so very important in this system is a message. And to deliver that message, always write something called a brand statement. I'm going to throw out my disclaimers on the brand statement. First of all, I wrote it very quickly because everything you see was done over the past 3 days. Second of all, I am a really, really, really bad dyslexic, so chances are there are things that are going to be spelled wrong. But I'll do my best to read it as my mind saw it. And if you're a former English teacher, don't throw a chair at me. We'll get it right once it goes final. But I want to go ahead and read this to you now. For over 330 years, people have been drawn to the peaceful banks of the Broad Creek. From the First Nation of the Nanticoke to the early settlers of Broad Creek Town, this special place has been the center of commerce and the center of community. That warm community spirit is still seen today in the dedication of our volunteer fire company, in the spirit of the Bulldogs at a Friday night football game, or in the vision and determination of our local leaders to weave together the tale of our history, our land, and our water. We are Laurel, Delaware, and we are connected to our rich history. We are the home of 4 governors and the birthplace of a 5th. We have the largest National Register district in the state, with over 800 properties. We have a 25-year legacy of a successful community development corporation. And we're not done yet. We are Laurel, Delaware, and we are connected to the land. We are proud of our agrarian roots, our farm influence, ingenuity, and the role we play at feeding our region and the nation. We are reminded of our heritage every year during the Strawberry Festival by the busloads of watermelons and by new additions like the reuse of Laurel grain by Proximity Malt, making us a center of the Mid-Atlantic's craft brewing industry. We are Laurel, Delaware, and we are reconnecting with our water. We are literally built on water. Whether it's called Broad Creek, Laurel River, or the harbor, our water has always been the lifeblood of our economy. We are reconnecting with our river today. We invite you to come discover the Ramble, our reconnection, bringing living, working, and playing to the banks of Broad Creek. We are Laurel, Delaware, and we are excited to invite you to rediscover us. Walk the banks of the Broad, paddle our waters, peruse our parks, dine in our restaurants, and become a part of our community. Explore all of the beauty of Nanticoke country from the most historic of base camps, and you'll learn what we mean when we say, Laurel, Delaware, great things come naturally. So what that statement does is that gives us the opportunity to go out and hit on all those things that we heard in those stakeholder meetings and bring them into a single statement that will allow us to start telling that story. So we have a baseline of colors, baseline of typeface, this baseline message, this inspiration of the ramble, and it all comes together into an overall logo that looks something a little like this. Very clean, very simple, bringing together nature and water, and introducing that idea of great things come naturally. Now, we want to launch this with an outdoor recreation campaign that helps you to position yourself in statewide relevance. And you got some interesting dynamics being so close to Maryland, but one of the things that we want to do, and if nobody hears it other than your own friends and neighbors, it'll still go a long way. But the rollout campaign introduces a slightly different idea, and it's the concept of Laurel, where Delaware goes outside. Being able to simply say that if you are interested in getting out, then this is where you go to do that. It's a very confident position statement that's able to put you in that mindset of regional base camp, so you can maximize economic impact from visitors to this region. So I want to jump in. I want to start talking about the system, because if it only stopped there, it'd kind of be like, yeah, I mean, I could take it or leave it, because everybody's opinion of something that they just saw that is supposed to represent their home, when you first see it for the first time, it feels a little awkward. But I want to show you how the system works. So first of all, you always want to make sure that it's expandable, that you can have the different tools that you need. So here you see several different lockups. One of the things that I think you recommended the other night at the public input meeting, the idea of historic Laurel on Broad Creek. You can absolutely have a lockup that says that. That's a fantastic way to position the community. Have an opportunity to have that tagline there. Creating a horizontal version. Being able to simplify that icon over time down for social media usage. Being able to have different stacked versions and just different ways that the logo works. Branding is not about having one and only one picture that you're forced to use all the time. It's about having the right tool at the right time to tell the right story. So from there, you can use this foundation to start to look at organizational expansion. So the first one that we look at is the Historical Society. The Historical Society, for the longest time, they've got a logo that's kind of a rectangle. It's got architectural elements along the upper corners, and then it just says Laurel Historical Society. There's nothing wrong with that logo. So what I did was I showed a couple different variations of how that could work. You see at the bottom, essentially the same version of the logo, simply adopting the more uniform word type and bringing Laurel out to kind of the forefront. But then also being able to have a slightly more contemporary logo. Now, why in the world would you want a contemporary logo for a historical society? Well, maybe there might be people my age that want to be involved in a historical society. Maybe the longevity and the economic impact of preservation is dependent on a broader range of residents to be able to preserve that largest National Register district in the state. Because the thing that we know is, although you're in a district, there is no protection that comes along with it. And there's no stream of free money that you just get without doing something in return. So we've got to constantly cultivate stewards of these historic properties. Now from there, as I mentioned in the brand statement, the Laurel Redevelopment Corporation, or LRC, is a absolutely phenomenal model of a development corporation in a community. And you guys have been doing it for next year will be 25 years. That shows a foresight that many communities your size have simply never had. So what I wanted to do was, right now, LRC has, they really just kind of had a historically architecturally kind of oriented, florally kind of thing. Is that the best way to describe it, Brian?
Yeah, that's good enough.
Okay. So what we wanted to do was, I really wanted to create something for that organization that captured the progressive, forward-thinking nature of what that organization is. So playing off of the same colors and typeface, but being able to create an icon that was really theirs. And I really wanted to do something that to me was kind of representative of, it's almost like the grid of a city moving into the waters, you know, the lines of the river. But something that was just kind of contemporary, but still reinforced that overall identity. Now, in addition to that, you've got some very interesting things that you have to think about every little element of the community, and are there things that are causing people to kind of scratch their head? One of the things that Brian pointed out to me, and I heard over and over again, was this idea of Laurel Town. I'm like, now what's Laurel Town? Was Laurel Town an old settlement right along the banks? What's the historic No, it's just a group of buildings now. So it's a development. It would kind of be like if you had a shopping center on 13. So is Laurel Town the right name, or is it kind of diluting that? Well, I think one of the things that we all know, and one of the things that we constantly preach about the idea of projects like the Ramble. If the only thing that the Ramble does is create some pretty pathways, then it's a failure. The Ramble is an economic infrastructure. The Ramble is a way for us to grow this community's economy. So we have to make sure that there's private sector investment, private sector growth, and market-driven desirability that is connected to that. So one of the things that I was thinking that we could recommend LRC might consider as the Ramble continues to move on is renaming Laurel Town into Rambleside Village. And here with this logo, what you can see is you can actually see I've merged together elements from the Ramble logo with elements from the Laurel logo, using typefaces from both. But now all of a sudden, if you are going to have energy around this development, shouldn't that also drive desirability of space right alongside it? So that might not be the name. The big concept there is let's think about everything, and let's make sure that every effort we make makes the maximum economic impact. So then from there, if you saw me at all this week, I probably have my baseball hat on because that's how I look in real life. In fact, I'm very uncomfortable not having it on right now. But one of the things that I always do is always look at collateral and merchandise. And the reason that I do that is it is essential when we're talking about the relationship between people and place that we empower people with the opportunity to show that they're proud of living there and they're proud to be connected there. You probably could go through, and there probably are places in the community that you could find a way to buy a Laurel Bulldog hat or Laurel Bulldogs shirt. But are there opportunities for you to buy merchandise to show off where you live? Non-high school related ways to show your pride. So that's really what a lot of this is. Whether it is things like shopping bags, one of the things that we know based off retail leakage studies is that, believe it or not, you can't buy everything you need in Laurel. Shocking, isn't it? Every now and then, you have to leave this market to purchase things. So when you do that, maybe we can empower you to let people know where that money's coming from. And vice versa, as the economy begins to shift, and I want to be very clear, somebody made the comment earlier in the week, it was made several times, so if you're the one that said it, don't feel like I'm calling you out. Several people said it. They very, very loudly and clearly proclaimed, retail will not work in downtown Laurel. End of story, no discussion. And I want to argue that point tonight. Retail is not going to be successful if you have one retailer who's going to go in and try to change the entire market trend all by themselves. Try to reintroduce downtown into consumer shopping habits all by themselves. But retail absolutely can and absolutely should be an economic component of your downtown district moving forward. And if you do a strategic job of figuring out how to reintroduce it in clusters so they achieve an appropriate amount of retail density to be able to succeed, then you can reintroduce that into your district. But that is something that we've got to do, and we have to constantly cultivate that. So my vision 5 years down the road is I would like to have more downtown businesses that serve both the residents of this community as well as visitors to this community. And I would love for them to be able to set a certain experience standard for what it's like to shop in Laurel. I always like to give ideas on things like shirts and, just very simple things that people could make. And it doesn't always have to be this simple slap a logo on it. You can do things that are a little more creative, a little more dynamic, a little more kind of fashion oriented. You can create things that actually directly connect to some of the activities that we want to go through. And people that do outdoor things, they, for some reason, love stickers. They love to stick stickers on things. I've been doing a lot of work in Virginia, and one of the Virginia tourism professionals that's doing product development and creating these experiences, he's funny because he's like, I'm in complete and total conflict because I hate clutter and I love stickers. So I've got to figure out just one place and only one place that I stick all my stickers. So he has this sticker door in his house, but it's just crazy. But the thing is, it's something that people can take away with them. Products that connect back into empowering local businesses to take advantage of this. Now, I think one of the things that's so crazy about a process like this is, first of all, there's an assumption made that this product that we've created over the last 3 days is owned completely and totally by the town, and it's going to be held in a box with a combination lock. And until you can get through the field of lasers and figure out how to break open the lock, you can't use the logo. But that's not how a community brand works. It's definitely not how a community brand succeeds. From the destination brand side of things, what we are introducing and suggesting is the idea of an open source system where it is made available digitally to anybody who wants to tap into it. So local businesses who have a relationship with their local customers can figure out what kind of products they might want. So if you own a coffee shop, maybe you're making coffee mugs. If you own a t-shirt shop, maybe you're making t-shirts. And allow and empower those businesses to profit off of the brand. That's a good way to get a business behind a brand. Now, even going so far as to introducing in very small numbers premium items that have the brand connected to it. Brands like North Face, Patagonia, other outdoor-oriented brands, you would be amazed at the impact that goes through someone's mind when they see a top-tier brand right alongside your community brand. We sit there and we talk about running ads in newspapers all day long, buying a full-page ad in a paper for hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Believe it or not, an $80 vest can go a long way. And that brand association actually begins to make people reposition in their mind what they think of the community. Being able to design things that have a certain design confidence to them, where you look at it and you're kind of like, huh, yeah, I'd actually wear that. It's amazing. I think one of the things that we're used to, and I'm sure you've all been a part of this before, has anybody participated in an event where they were given a free t-shirt? Has anybody ever worn that free t-shirt out in real public again later? Or, you know, it's kind of like, oh, thank you, a free t-shirt. I know what I'm going to paint the house in next time. Because it has 6,000 logos on the back, and it's, you know, it looks like it was designed by a second grader that you know, couldn't hold a crayon straight. So it's like, you know, you want to be able to create things with confidence. Every single thing you create doesn't have to say Laurel on it. Over time, that icon is going to come to represent you. Now, to me, where it really gets fun is when we get into the event extension. So I did my best to kind of look through and find different logos, and then there were some things that I gave myself permission to look at and other things that I didn't. Like, for example, I did not redesign the Strawberry Festival. And the reason that I didn't was because it's not the Laurel Strawberry Festival. It's the St. Philip's Strawberry Festival, so I didn't want to overstep my bounds. But the first place that I started was Bikes and Brews. Now, I know that the logo as it exists now says Broad Creek Bikes and Brews. I'm going to tell you that strategically I slightly changed the name. In actuality, it was an accident. So I designed a logo that says Bikes and Brews on Broad Creek. That can easily be changed, not a big deal. Don't anybody freak out. But now all of a sudden, so let me tell you about the old logo if you're not familiar with it. It was a beer cap. And on the top side of the beer cap, it had a bicycle. And on the bottom side of the beer cap, it had more beer. We did pretty much the same thing, only slightly simpler. Using typeface, using an accent typeface here being able to tap into the Ramble logo, having a beer cap on the top half, a bike gear on the bottom half, but having a certain amount of design confidence to it. The thing that is so important about event identities is you will bring people from outside your community into this community. They will participate in an event. They'll have a great day. They'll turn around and leave and say there's nothing to do in Laurel, even though they just spent a great day in Laurel. Because what we typically do is we create a vacuum around an event. So you can have a great experience, but it doesn't transfer over to the community as a whole. So we really want to make sure that we can do that brand integration. Now, one of Jamie's favorite events to put on the 4th of July, you know, again, just keeping things simple. Believe it or not, I checked the rule books before I did this today. Just because you have a 4th of July event does not mean that you have to have fireworks in the logo. It doesn't. You have to communicate. Now, guess what? I'm gonna make a guess. When you do a poster to advertise July 4th in Laurel, you're probably going to put a picture on that poster. What might you put a picture of? Fireworks. So I think that's one of the things that we have to think about is just clean, impactful connectivity. So those are some events that you already have. The next couple things are events that I've decided to make you do. Luckily, tonight I will not be assigning who's responsible for the events yet. That will come at a later date. So the first thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to see, is there a way that we could create an event that engaged both stories from our history and the river, creating an activity on the river, something that was kind of fun, something that engaged families. And what I finally landed on was what I'm calling the floating locomotive river festival. You know, the story of the Norfolk Express, jumping the bridge, landing on the Golden Gate is a really, really interesting tale. In fact, I went so far in one of my readings to come across exactly what kind of engine it was, the exact name of the conductor, and the conductor that he replaced on that line. It's like, man. So I think that you could do something really cool with an event like this. I think that you could have a boat parade. You could have people decorate their boats to look like locomotives, which is kind of weird, but people would think is cool. You could have people build locomotive-style boats and come out and race them. There are all kinds of things that you can do. I did not recommend jumping off of the bridge just want everyone to know that, even though there was talk at some point over the past 3 days about Red Bull style challenges, if anybody's ever seen those, that's not where I'm going. But what I hope you can start to see is I hope you can start to see that events should be strategic. You want to do events that help to connect or cause people to do something. So being able to have an event that gets people on the water, in the creek, is very, very important. And I thought that this story was one of the more unique things that I had heard. So I wanted to go with that. The next thing that I'm introducing is not really an event, it's more of an initiative. But it's also not one of my ideas. One of you all came up with it, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So I took it and I tweaked it just a touch. I want to see Laurel go after an initiative, and I believe that if it is worded right, I believe that you might be able to get funding from both state level arts organizations and the state level Department of Ag. And what I want you to do is I want you to create an art project around the watermelon school buses. I'm calling it Watercolors, the artistic side of agriculture. But you can imagine the impact if all of a sudden all of those watermelon buses became rolling works of art. And those rolling works of art then became associated with Laurel through your connection with the block. I think this could be a project that could really get a lot of eyes opened. And it is a phenomenal way to use arts to teach about agriculture. And agriculture is such an instrumental part of your story here and your economy today that it's a really great way to accent that. And honestly, the kind of side byproduct of it is, it would make some of those things look a lot better. Because some of them are kind of rough. Like, we're going to go cut this thing off with a chainsaw, and then next thing you know, is that still street worthy, shall we say? But I hope you can kind of see ideas like that. Just think out of the box. Figure out ways that you can take that Laurel name and really have people say, oh my God, they're doing that in Laurel? The thing that, and I haven't used the word because it's such a buzzword right now, but what Laurel needs to do is it needs to have a message that is so clean and so confident that it shakes somebody. Kind of like, Laurel? But I never heard of Laurel. How is there something so cool that I didn't hear of? Because then all of a sudden what's going to happen is they're going to feel like they're outside the loop. And to get in the loop, they have to come explore it for themselves. And everything that we're building is we're not talking about this perfectly manicured, historic village that might be one of the first towns in the first state. No, we are telling you point blank, you're still going to have to work for your experience. It's still part of our experience is effort. And that's a good thing. That buys us what we need to be able to invite people in and not disappoint them yet. So, with all those, you start to see how organizational extension works. You start to see how event extension works. And then we move into one of my favorite categories, signage. I came to Laurel 3 or 4 or 5 times and had no clue how in the world this community worked. Like, which bridge am I on? Where am I? Why do I keep ending up back on the highway? And where is your street grid? Like, I was completely and totally lost. And now I will say over the past 3 days, I get it now. I'm so excited because I finally get it. But literally you can leave any street and end up on 13. And it's the weirdest thing. It's almost like a weird Twilight Zone thing. Like, no, I just drove west. Why am I back on 13? So So signage plays a very important role there. And what I'm showing here is I'm showing the idea of a comprehensive signage system. Now, what communities typically do, and Laurel has done it, when you go out on your highway, because guess what? You got the most traffic out there. You go and you find where your corporate limits are, and you put up that sign. Welcome to Laurel. And then what do we hear after that? Crickets. Maybe if we put thanks for visiting Laurel on the backside of the other gateway sign, like Bridgeville does, then you get that second communication. Now, I want to be very, very deliberate here. When the LRC was created almost 25 years ago, there were 3 elements that were identified as the primary assets that this community has. The first was the river, in no particular order. The first that I remember is the river. The second was the historic homes and historic structures, and the third was Highway 13. Highway 13 absolutely is the producer and the main artery of this community. But we have got to make sure that as people travel north and south on 13, that if that is all they see, they are never left with the impression that they have seen Laurel. It is essential that our signage helps to educate them on all the things they have just driven past. It is also essential that that signage looks and feels different, more confident, more classic than the signage that typically appears on a large divided highway would. So what we have here is we have a series of different signs, and I'm going to kind of go through. If we start on the left-hand side, this is what we call a pole-mounted gateway sign. I want to introduce an interesting idea to you. Just because you have welcomed someone doesn't mean you can't welcome them again. And I think that we also know that as you enter into the community, there are several places where the overall context of how the place feels changes. Those are the places where these pole-mounted gateways appear. As you start to enter into your historic downtown core, you're entering into a different kind of place. So you enter and you use those gateway signs. Now from there, I will tell you this. You guys have tremendously distinct honor. As a matter of fact, I have had the privilege of working with over 150 communities, 30 states, visited This is the first time in my entire career, 15 years of doing this work, that I ever heard the word parking mentioned. Now, some of you might wonder that the reason that the moral level has been is there's a parking problem. There's not a parking problem. There's plenty of parking places right now. We want there to be a parking problem. That's our goal. Just want everybody to be clear. We hope that we're going to have a parking problem in 3 years. We hope that we have more cars than we have spaces. But one of the things I always throw in a parking sign, because that gives me the opportunity to do my parking speech. A community has 3 different kinds of parking problems that they might come across. One is a parking management problem, one is a parking awareness problem, and one is a parking capacity problem. The funny thing about communities is the moment anybody ever mentions parking, you automatically jump to the parking capacity problem. A normal parking space on average in the United States today costs $7,000 for a surface space. And if you're building a parking deck, it's about $22,000 on average per space. So let's make sure that we've done everything we need to do with parking management and with parking awareness. Parking signs telling people where to go. If we're inviting visitors into our community, Those visitors are going to have a slightly higher consumer motivation. Let's make sure we put them where we want them. They're probably going to be more willing to walk that block from a parking lot into a store or restaurant. So be very mindful of how you bring them in. The next thing that I will say about the parking management thing is, has anybody ever gone to a community and you've been driving down the street and you're like, I really want to park and go to one of these shops, but oh my gosh, I hate to parallel park. So you end up passing up a space that was open because you really just don't feel like parallel parking in that space, and you go around the corner and you end up finding a surface lot and park and get out. Guess what? Some smart planner designed it to be that way. They put parallel parking spaces on purpose because they're harder. And that's because those are the spaces that they want to turn over the most. They want to have people, that's why a lot of times they might have a 2-hour time limit or a 1-hour time limit, because they want them to constantly churn over. And if you're planning on staying longer, they want you to park over in the peripheral lot and get out and walk. So then next, we've got some street banners. Street banners are pretty cool. I've got a next slide, all of street banners, so I'll talk about them there. An area map, having pole-mounted maps. If you want to orient pedestrians to take advantage of all that you have to offer, you can use those maps. These next two signs are called trailblazer signs. Trailblazer signs typically have 3 destinations on them. These are, sometimes they go on the highway. They carry themselves all the way through into downtown, into the core of the community, and into the parking. They can scale down. These are both appropriately scaled for highway use. These signs are governed by what's called the MUTCD standards, which is the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It's an absolutely stunning document that the U.S. Department of Transportation wrote. I downloaded a PDF of it to my iPad. My iPad weighed 7 pounds more. It is the absolute most horrendous thing you ever have to read. But what it does is it sets those standards for what a sign has to have. And believe it or not, if you're putting a sign out on 13, do you know that the letters, the minimum letter height is 6 inches? Half a foot minimum letter height on a sign on that highway. So you want to make sure that you have signs that go through and are driving people in, making them aware of what they're missing out on. And then I added one more because I think it's really important. The idea of making people aware of river access. You're giving people a lot of different river access points. While I was here this week, you put in a kayak launch. I mean, that's pretty awesome. So are we going to sign to it? Are we going to tell people? The answer to that is yes, but the problem is without a comprehensive wayfinding system, what you're going to do is you're going to sign to it just because you did that. And then the next thing you do, you're going to be like, oh, well, we just put in a bike trail, so we need to put bike trail signs in. And then the next thing you do, and then the next thing you do, and then the next thing you do, and then you have all these signs that you just kind of slapped up because you thought about it when you needed it. So integrating all that stuff into a uniform system, start thinking about signage now as you're developing the destinations. And then with street banners, you can do a lot of fun things with street banners. Most people think that street banners are pretty, and that's what they're for. These can be very, very strategic. Believe it or not, the absolute cheapest and most effective way to restore a building is to put a banner up in front of it. Because then you can't. Now, honestly, that's not the way that you preserve buildings, as we all know. But one of the things that is truly, truly dynamic about banners is they create visual connectivity. You can be in your car, and the color and continuity of those banners can help educate you about districts, about things that are connected, about where I should be and where I shouldn't be. The simple appearance of a concentration of banners in an area indicates subconsciously to a driver that they're in a place where pedestrians and vehicles coexist. Believe it or not, having a concentration of banners in a district actually slows people down in their cars. Not as effective as speed bumps, but still, it denotes that you're in a special place. You can use banners along nature walks. You can use banners along walkways. Being able to use those to really help illustrate and create and activate the ramble, I think, is something that could be really, really interesting. So you can do all kinds of things. Moving forward, you might use banners to market events and things like that, but you want to create something that, in the beginning, something that will last for a while, a design that you don't constantly have to take up and put down. So then finally, coming around the bend, I just wanted to show you a couple of examples. I did 4 different ads that kind of bring some of this together. I wanted messaging for the community to be very confident. A lot of times when you go through the process of thinking about design and you go through and you decide you're going to buy an ad, you think about how much that ad is going to cost. So then you say, God, that's expensive. I need to say anything I ever thought of telling somebody in that ad. So next thing you know, it looks kind of like a novel. And it's like you ask the publication if you can get an accordion fold so that you can tell people more. Saying less oftentimes says more, especially when you're in the context of a publication. But I will say a lot of times I design these, and I design these with the intent that they might not ever go in a magazine. But they might show up on a Facebook page. They might be printed out and put in a vacant store window. They might be shared at events. I had one community that took these ads and the mayor printed them out and would frame them and give them to business leaders in the community. And then all of a sudden, it was Pascagoula, Mississippi, all of a sudden these ads started showing up in the offices of all of the businesses in the community. It's kind of an interesting way. That was not my idea, that was all him. But the thing that I like about this is it shows you how simplicity, cleanliness, and the expandability of this tagline, whether it's great summers come naturally, sweetness comes naturally, great paddling, or even preservation. Being able to connect those dots and tell those stories and really weave everything into a singular story, but still having that versatility to be able to talk about all the assets that you have. So I said I was going to do my best to keep it till 7, and it's 7 on the dot. So with that, it is your turn. I would love to hear your thoughts, your first impressions. I understand that when you see all of this, especially with something that is so sensitive as the place you call home, it's a little bit like drinking water out of a fire hose. But I really love to hear any thoughts or initial reactions. Mayor.
Well, I would just like to say that I think you've done a great job for us.
Fantastic.
And I'm impressed. And I really like the main tagline.
Good.
Great things come naturally.
Good.
Good. I really concept alone.
Fantastic.
And I see a lot of neat opportunities for unifying the graphics around town. I think you've given us a lot of great ideas to think about. So I understand now why you've been in 450 communities.
Thank you, Mayor.
This was a great job you did here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Anybody else?
I love the way you integrated all of the,
Awesome.
as well. It's
Great.
definitely needs freshening up.
Awesome.
And use it.
Great.
We talked about changing Laurel Town name.
Yeah. And again, like I say, that kind of change, that's something that probably needs a little bit more thought than what I was able to put into it. But I think that that the confusion that it does cause, especially with it being in an area of such focus right now and reinvestment, I think that now's a good time to start thinking about that and having something up your sleeve strategically to help make sure you take advantage of that market shift.
I just had a question. I'm a graphics geek and
Yeah.
and a planner, and so it's like, wow, talk about integrating those 2 disciplines. It's amazing. I just love it. I just had a question about where the Laurel, where Delaware goes outside comes in. Is that like a collateral brand, or how does that
What I kind of feel in my mind, I feel like we're going to see that in or out in two main ways. First of all, I would like to see a collateral piece, a printed brochure that visually and informationally positions Laurel as this kind of base camp concept to be able to experience that outdoor rec in the region. So the idea of where Delaware goes outside can manifest itself there, but then the other thing is a business development push, focusing on outdoor related business. So where Delaware goes outside is a message that can be this companion when the community proactively goes after businesses to help fill some of those kind of vision spots along the Ramble. Because we all know it's like, okay, the Ramble's a great idea, but if there's not an outfitter that I can rent boats from on the water, we've missed an opportunity. So being able to have that position statement in your pocket is one of those things. I didn't want to overemphasize it today because I didn't want to confuse the issue. I think as we move forward, and the nice thing is I'm right up the road so I can help figure this out, we're going to know when it feels right and when it doesn't. But I wanted to throw it out and show it tonight because I felt like it was an important piece of the puzzle. And, I was talking about my wife at dinner last night. As I was working today, I was sending her little screen caps. And when I sent her that picture, my response was yes in all caps with a lot of exclamation points. So I think that there's something about that message that is going to engage folks. And, I think about up in Milford right now, there's a Facebook group that is Milford Trails and Ponds, I think is what it's called. And so it's just a group of people that love going outdoors. And this would be the kind of message that would resonate with those folks very loud and clear.
I just was trying to understand how to use it versus the main.
Yeah, the way that I would say it, if you can think of it this way, it will never appear as like a tagline underneath it. It is far more a campaign that is focused on that initial push to position Laurel as an outdoor haven. So, Brian.
Real happy to hear you say we, because now that just like Jules and Dave and Leanne and everybody else, folks that come to Laurel that do things.
Absolutely, and I will tell you, I've said it a couple times over the course of this week. Any improvement that happens in Laurel is an improvement for me because you are part of my community, and that's one of the things that I think is so cool about this, especially this part of the state. It's like we all live in the shadow of this looming beach tourism destination, and we're trying to scrap and struggle and carve economies out of, sometimes what feels like nothing. I'm sure the mayor has sat through plenty enough, pitches hoping that we're going to convince somebody to land a business here, and then it's slipped through the cracks to something, sexier somewhere else. And yeah, I am very, very excited about the plans that you have. And even more so, plans are one thing. People are what's even more important. And one of the biggest things that I wanted to make sure that I tried to build into this was something that was relatable and connectable and not exclusive. Because what this system needs to help you all do is wrap your arms around and embrace more of your own citizens so you can realize your own vision together. The group that is the core group is simply too small to do it all by themselves. We need to grow that group. We need to learn lessons of inclusion. We need to do a better job of experiencing the dynamic nature of a diverse group of people that are implementing these visions. So I think all those things are kind of connected in.
That'll be a pitch that could be sold. The piece is that coffee shop, like I said, we have to use it as a
Right,
whatever.
right.
So I have really.
Well, and to go off that and then to tie into Leanne being a graphics nerd, let me tell you a little bit about next steps and let me tell you about what this looks like from here. So we're going to have a little bit of time to kind of share this. I've actually recorded the presentation tonight. I'm going to go home this evening and post it on YouTube, and I'll share that link with everybody so we can kind of get that out. I'm going to say something that's going to sound a little funny, but hopefully you can stick through this with me. This is one of those situations where everybody's opinion is not equal. All you guys came out and you, at this point, have given an hour and 10 minutes of your life to sitting through this presentation. You had to listen to everything that I said about it, all my stupid jokes and all my nerds on design. You have earned a different level of opinion than a person who maybe just sees the logo in a newspaper article and says, I can't believe the town spent $8,000 on a logo. I could have done that for $50. You know, that's how it works. We all know how that works. So one of the things that we really try to do, and part of the reason that I record it and post it like that, is moving forward, this brand gets better through refinement. It gets better through community embracement. But that being said, there are going to be some people out there that don't like it, and they're going to, should have had a locomotive on it, should have had a train. My God, I love a train, should have had a train on the logo. That's fine. I'm very comfortable that it doesn't have a train. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through, and once the kind of steering team and this core group that's been leading this process gives me the green light, then I'm going to go through, I'm going to prep every single logo that I created. I'm going to save it in 5 different file formats. So no matter what, you will never be stuck in a situation where all you have is a JPEG. And for those of you who have ever been in that situation, you'll know it'd be good not to have just a JPEG. I will create a style guide. The style guide will be a document that will tell you exactly how to use and how not to use this brand. It will define the typefaces. It will define the colors. It will show you inappropriate use. It will show you appropriate use. It will talk a little bit about ad design and that kind of stuff. It's not a textbook, but it just really keeps everything in a nice way. That is all going to live online. And no matter what, whoever wants it with a single link will be able to get access to the entire brand system. They'll be able to get access of all the photos that I took this week while I was here. And one of the things that I'm going to commit to you all is, believe it or not, the first week of March is not necessarily the most beautiful week in Laurel, Delaware. So I'm going to come back in early spring once things turn green and trees have leaves, and I'm going to shoot more photos. And I'm going to build the base of a digital photo library for you all to use, but we're also going to put it in a place where the community can continue to contribute to that library. So you have an open source photo library that allows people to take those resources and run with them. And my goal And in fact, I think it is required, if my memory serves me correctly, we need to have all of that complete by March 31st. Not the photos. The photos will be extra. I'll just do that for fun. But all the style guide, all the digital delivery, everything will be prepared and shareable by the end of the month. So that's my next steps. First, load the video, look for refinement, and then go through and do final packaging. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
There are many communities of contact and things you've done contract work with. How advantageous or how important would it be to have a paid person to coordinate this, to get people together, to spread the gospel? And how much of a leg up would that give our group if we had a half-time person, say, or some person that's dedicated to this and really has some commitment to it?
Man, just put me on the spot to spend other people's money. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that if this community was able to find both the resources to fund and the passionate person to do, that it would be unbelievably beneficial to have someone who wakes up every day with their task being seeing this plan through. There is not enough time for the folks on town staff now to do that because there's too much else. So the identification that the need for there to be new manpower, I think, is spot on. One of the things that I think that Laurel might want to think about and consider is there might be an opportunity, and I go back to your legacy of doing a development corporation long before people were doing development corporations. One of the things that I am starting to hear whispering of, but I still haven't seen anybody pull it off, is multiple organizations in a community realizing that they are trying to create destination status and having multiple organizations essentially share a professional. So the town, LRC, chamber, school district, historical society. It wouldn't ever be a 5-way, 6-way split because everybody doesn't have the same amount of work. But imagine, especially if there was a communication and kind of organizational bent on it, imagine the benefit of having a person who's like completely and totally in the know because they're working with all these different groups and their job is to communicate. There's some cool stuff that could come out of Laurel if that were to happen. So the short answer after the long answer is I think that would be great, but it's not essential. Like, you can still realize success without having that person, but having that person will definitely, I think, will escalate and speed up the process. Fair enough. Any other questions? Yes.
Outstanding work, truly.
Thank you.
I think from my perspective, the vision that many folks in the room share. It's so damn good, I'm afraid somebody's going to steal it. How do you, before this is cemented by Laurel, how do you protect the brand and the messaging?
Well, okay, so you got a couple things. That's a good question. First of all, it's luckily, legally, it's automatically protected upon creation. It's not registered, but it is technically inherently trademarked when I came up with it. And since I work for you, it's yours. But I will say this. I've done this a lot, and I've gotten asked the question about trademarking and copyright protection and that kind of thing a lot. Communities exist in a very, very interesting place where if you dig into trademark law, you come to realize that there's this whole segment there where you have to prove damage or loss. And proving damage or loss as a community is a difficult thing to do. Most of the time, if a community doesn't have an attorney on retainer with them that's just hanging out and making money whether they do something or not, I just say it's almost just as effective to have a really nasty grant than it is to have a federal trademark. The thing that you will find is, for some reason, every community is scared that somebody's going to take the logo and start a strip club. Not sure why that's like the overwhelming fear. I can tell you I have never in my entire career had my logo inspire a strip club. I did have a logo in South Carolina that was adopted by a local OBGYN office. So that's that was an interesting spin on things. But no, honestly, Ed, I think to be honest, one of the big things that I have learned is in this particular realm of things, people, they want to be different. They want to be different. So we can do a couple things. If you notice on some of the things I showed, I went ahead and dropped a TM on it because I can do that because I created it. I can't turn it into a Circle R without spending the $395 registration fee. I think that one of the things that I would say is, as it moves towards merchandising and things like that, I have got usage agreements. I have got all that kind of stuff that I can share with the style guide. I've got the resources to help kind of control it. But I can honestly tell you that with all the experience behind me, I think you're going to actually be shocked at how easy this is to administer. 99.9% of people want to use it for the right reason, and they want to do it the right way. Most mistakes that are going to occur are going to be just that. They're going to be mistakes because somebody simply did not know better, but they were still really excited. And in the grand scheme of things, I still chalk that up as a win. Richmond, Virginia went through a brand several years ago where they created a stylized RVA, and a regional nail salon has adopted their logo, and RVA Nails is now all over the region. That's probably not what they intended, but in the grand scheme of things, it's putting that brand more places out in front of people in neon lights. So I think that for the most part, we'll find that the typical usage will give us enough protection. If there's certain elements that we feel like we need to do a little more on, then I think we can do that, and we can figure out what we need to do to make sure that the most strategic elements of the plan stay protected so they can benefit Laurel. All right, guys, we're pushing 7:30. I want to make sure that I get you out of here in a timely manner. I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for your time over the course of this week, your participation, and thank you for allowing me to come into your community and to share my thoughts without a filter. I'm not allowed to not have a filter at home, so it's nice to go other places and take the filter away. But I hope that it was made loud and clear in the things that I shared with you about your community, that over the course of this week, I have grown to really love Laurel, Delaware. And you have got a very, very intriguing community. You have got a wealth of opportunity. One of the things that I did not speak to too much, I mentioned it kind of peripherally, but I want to see Laurel, Delaware emerge as the center in the mid-Atlantic where young families and younger individuals go to purchase and restore historic properties. I want you all to create a dynamic where historic homes and restored homes do not denote elitism. They denote community pride. And you have enough stock to be able to do that. You have a housing price point to allow that kind of entry. You need the educational infrastructure, but guess what? You've had the historic planner from Sussex County here all week long. You're the home of the state archaeologist. You're the home of the state director of the National Register listing program, and you're the home of the SHPO director, the State Historic Preservation Office. They all live in Laurel. So in my mind, there is no more appropriate place than Laurel to position and take advantage of that dynamic. So I'm excited for all the opportunities that you guys have, and I thank you all for your participation and your openness. Thank you so much.